Oh, hey, it's Brian Altano from IGN, and with me is our PlayStation podcast lead, Jonathan Dornbush,
Hello.
and our Xbox podcast lead, Ryan McCaffrey, to answer the biggest question we have for the next few years: how will Nintendo compete with the next round of next-generation consoles?
This is going to be very interesting to see what Nintendo does, because third-party support has been the anchor weighing on them, just dragging Nintendo down, although not as much in the Switch era, because they've been killing it, and they've gotten all the great, the Nindies, and of course, great first-party stuff. But we have seen some good first-party support between, The Witcher and Doom and Wolfenstein, like some legit high-end third-party support on Switch. But when these two new consoles roll around in less than a year from right now, then the Witcher barely runs on the Switch.
The ports will begin to dry up.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll even be technically feasible for Nintendo to get third-party ports anymore.
It's interesting because Nintendo has never worried that much about keeping parity with PlayStation and Xbox for the last few generations. Like, that hasn't always been their big sticking point. But this will be even further behind. Normally they were a little behind, but the Switch is already behind Xbox One and PS4, not to mention the Pro and the Xbox One X. So when you add another step further removed, that's going to be a lot to ask third-party developers and publishers to say, hey, develop something totally powered down from what you're focusing on right now.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's one of the risks they took, sort of launching a mid-generational console, which is, I think we still have trouble sort of categorizing, compartmentalizing which generation the Switch goes into. Technically, it might already be in the next generation, and the rest of us are just catching up. But I do think it's going to be interesting, because right now, as you guys have stated, there is some parity, or at least some ability to port through magic and wizardry some of the bigger games that are appearing on as third parties on the Switch right now, but that's gonna dry up very quickly. I think going into next gen, they will have a tremendously solid user base. They have a fantastic, stable of intellectual properties and first-party exclusives. They've got tons of awesome indie games. But yeah, once we start seeing, the next wave of really big third-party games coming to next gen consoles, and the inability to port those to Switch, things could get a little problematic.
The nice part for Nintendo is, when PS5 and the Xbox Scarlet do release next fall, the current generation of PS4 and Xbox One doesn't stop on a dime.
Right.
So the support is going to continue for a while. Third-party publishers are not going to be very want to leave 100 million PlayStation 4 owners behind in an instant. So Nintendo's got room for a transition period.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just the third-party support's not just going to go off a cliff. So, I mean, I wonder when. I don't think it's so much if, but when is the so-called Switch Pro coming, or will Nintendo skip that and go straight to a Super Switch or a Switch 2 with backwards compatibility?
I love Super Switch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think next year they're going to be okay, because like you were saying, Ryan, with the last generation jump, we had games that were coming to 360 and Xbox One, PS3 and PS4. I think we'll see that again this generation, and so having things on Switch in 2020, I don't think Nintendo needs to worry about too much support, even though we don't know what Nintendo's really up to next year. Other than Animal Crossing, we don't have much of a sense of what they're doing.
Right, we know about Breath of the Wild 2 in development. We don't have, a confirmed release date for that yet.
Yeah, there are big games Nintendo could put out next year, or even the year after, and so I agree with Ryan. I do think they have a little bit of leg room, a bit of runway to prepare themselves, but I don't think after, another year or two, they can play it safe with the Switch as it is.
Do you guys think that Microsoft, and to an extent Sony, have almost forced Nintendo's hand into really, really embracing backwards compatibility more with whatever the next piece of hardware is from Nintendo?
I hope so, yeah. I mean, on the flip side, Mario Kart 8 is one of the best-selling games of the generation, and it's centuries old at this point. Nintendo has figured out a way to repeatedly resell people like me the exact same game almost annually.
You're the problem.
I am the problem. I bought the original Super Mario Brothers like 40 times by now. And so while I would love to see backwards compatibility, they also don't necessarily need it, because people will keep buying the same old games over and over.
Yeah, with them it's a really interesting question, because on the DS there was the Game Boy Advance slot, so they're not strangers to backward compatibility, and I would hope they don't go from the Switch cartridges to, hey, we're going to try our own mini discs again, let's see if that works. But I think they'll probably keep parity with what the Switch is working with now. and probably have some bit of backward compatibility, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they do find ways to resell us on whether it's a game from the last generation or from 5 generations ago.
There's also the reality that at the end of the day, and this is sort of moving the goalposts, these systems aren't technically competing because this is at the end of the day still a handheld. And as is what we know so far, the next Xbox and next PlayStation probably won't be portable devices.
Hey, xCloud, if they're working on it, you'll be able to play your Xbox games, stream them from your home to anything, anywhere.
True, but not on an airplane, not anywhere without like competent Wi-Fi.
That's true.
And so I think Nintendo will still have that to hold on to. If you think about the way the 3DS or the DS or the GBA competed with the big consoles at the time, it stood its own. And so that's the thing they do have in the back pocket, no pun intended. It's a big back pocket.
Yeah.
But I think that they can lean on that angle for it too. This was also an interesting year for Nintendo because they kind of put out their sort of like B team. You know, they got Luigi, their Fire Emblems.
Hey.
I mean,
Luigi's Mansion's really good.
Luigi is the definitive B team next to Mario. It is a great game. But you know, they did really well this year. They had one of their best selling console years yet. A lot of their first party games sold incredibly well. So they don't necessarily need to roll out the big guns to compete just yet.
I mean, I think this year showed us a lot of what their future strategy could be because 2018, this is the 3rd year that the Switch is out, 2019.
Yep.
2018 was a down year, both in the number of releases and I think the sales-wise, like the momentum that they kept. Whereas this year, yes, none of these were Breath of the Wild or Mario Odysseys, but they were putting out a steady stream of exciting, great releases. And I think that really propelled them forward. And then when you have something like the Switch Lite with Pokemon, that obviously is something where they're seeing Pokemon was always a handheld thing. This was always for kids. They're finding ways to continue pushing the Switch out there, even if they don't have Breath of the Wild 2 ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, launching a new SKU at the end of the next year that was just a brand new color scheme for the Switch or the Switch Lite that was Breath of the Wild 2 themed or something like that might just be all they need for now.
Yeah,
I do think the shoe's going to drop eventually and they're going to have to make some big decisions.
They need to do a Switch 2.0 or a Super Switch, but I don't think they should do that next year. I think when PS5s and Xbox 2s, the Scarlets, are going to be on shelves and on Amazon front pages, I don't think adding a 3rd piece of hardware to that will help anyone.
Well, I agree with you just from sheer timeline's sake. Even the Wii U, which is the 2nd biggest disaster in Nintendo history after the Virtual Boy, that lasted, I think, 4 years before we got a new console. And as you said, this is only the 3rd year, of the Switch. So yeah, I think maybe 2021 might look more likely for.
We might start to hear about something.
Yeah, I am very curious to see what their next move is because by consolidating their handheld and their console lineage together, you've basically made something that can't strike out. Because when the Wii U was failing, the 3DS was doing pretty well, and you know that's the thing that has to happen for them. And so whatever they do next has to keep working. That said, the Switch is awesome, and so making a better version of it is a good thing to do.
In the meantime, Doom Eternal is one of the biggest third-party releases of 2020. It's coming to Switch, and don't laugh. Cyberpunk 2077 could come to Switch because
we laughed.
CD Projekt Red got The Witcher.
They got The Witcher on there,
and yes, Cyberpunk's a little further along in the technology department, but. I wouldn't put it past them. If Witcher 3 made CD Projekt Red a ton of money, I wouldn't be at all surprised if they figure out how to do Cyberpunk on the Switch.
It could be the blurriest game ever made, but still Cyberpunk portable. We'll see. So ladies and gentlemen, let us know what you think in the comments. How will Nintendo compete against the next Xbox and the next PlayStation? Lots of theories. Will it be games, new hardware? Tons of options here. For all things video games, Nintendo, Xbox, and PlayStation, listen to all of our podcasts every week because they're awesome. And for everything else, IGN.